Imagine for a moment that your life is a backpack, and every single thing you give a fuck about is a heavy stone you're carrying inside. The rude comment from a stranger? A stone. Your friend's perfect vacation on Instagram? A stone. The fear of not being special enough? A massive, heavy rock. Most of us are walking through life exhausted, not because life is hard, but because our backpacks are overflowing with stones that don't actually matter. Welcome to Read and Rise. Today, we aren't here to tell you that everything will be okay or that you are a unique snowflake. In fact, we're here to do the opposite. We are diving into the global phenomenon, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, by Mark Manson. This isn't your typical sugar-coated self-help book. It is a raw, honest, and hilariously blunt guide to living a good life by learning one crucial skill: the art of selective concern. Manson argues that we have a limited amount of energy, a limited number of fucks to give. If you waste them on everything, you will have nothing left for the things that truly define your soul. Today, we're going to learn how to empty that backpack, throw away the useless stones, and choose the burdens that are actually worth carrying. We are going to dismantle the feedback loop from hell, debunk the myth of being special, and discover why the secret to happiness is actually solving better problems. But before we start this psychological spring cleaning, make sure you're a part of our growing community. Hit that subscribe button on Read and Rise and join thousands of others who are tired of the superficial and ready to rise toward a life of substance. Let's stop caring about the trivial and start caring about the transformational. Are you ready? Let's dive in. The first core idea: the feedback loop from hell and the backwards law. At the heart of Mark Manson's philosophy lies a psychological trap he calls the feedback loop from hell. In our modern, hyper-connected culture, we are constantly bombarded with images of perfect lives, extraordinary success, and relentless positivity. This creates an unspoken expectation that we should feel amazing all the time. Consequently, when we feel anxious, sad, or frustrated, we don't just feel bad, we feel bad about feeling bad. We become anxious about being anxious, or guilty about feeling guilty. This is the loop, a self-perpetuating cycle of negative emotions triggered by our refusal to accept the inherent struggles of being human. Manson argues that the desire for a more positive experience is itself a negative experience, while the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. This is known as the backwards law, an idea originally popularized by philosopher Alan Watts. By trying too hard to be happy, we constantly highlight what we lack. We obsess over the gap between our current reality and our idealized perfect self. Ironically, the more we pursue feeling good, the less satisfied we become, because the pursuit itself reinforces the idea that we aren't good enough as we are. To break this loop, Manson suggests that we must practice the art of selective concern. We have a finite amount of emotional energy, a limited number of FUs to give in our lifetime. If we spend them on every minor inconvenience, such as a rude comment from a stranger or a slow internet connection, we will have nothing left for the things that actually matter: our health, our purpose, and our deepest relationships. The subtle art is not about being indifferent or uncaring. It is about being comfortable with being different and being okay with the fact that life is often messy and imperfect. By embracing the negative, the pain, the failure, and the awkwardness, we strip away their power over us. When you accept that it is perfectly fine to feel unfine, the feedback loop from hell loses its momentum. You stop fighting your emotions and start navigating through them. This radical honesty is the first step toward genuine resilience. Success, in Manson's view, is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of better problems. When we stop giving our energy to the trivial, we finally gain the clarity to focus on the transformational. The second core idea: the entitlement epidemic. You are not special. One of the most provocative and ego-bruising chapters in Mark Manson's work is the deconstruction of the self-esteem movement. For decades, we have been told by parents, teachers, and motivational speakers that we are all special, unique, and destined for greatness. Manson argues that this well-intentioned narrative has backfired spectacularly, creating a generation characterized by entitlement. Entitlement manifests in two ways. Either you believe you are amazing and deserve special treatment, or you believe you are uniquely broken and deserve special treatment because of your suffering. In both cases, the individual believes they are an exception to the rules that govern the rest of humanity. Manson posits that the vast majority of us are, by definition, average. While our culture celebrates the 1%, the billionaire tech geniuses, the world-class athletes, and the viral celebrities, it ignores the reality that most of life happens in the middle of the bell curve. The obsession with being extraordinary is actually a trap. If you believe you must be special to be worthy, then anything less than total greatness feels like a total failure. This all-or-nothing mentality leads to a constant state of insecurity and a desperate need for external validation to prove that you aren't just ordinary. The danger of entitlement is that it acts as a shield against growth. If you believe you are naturally superior, you don't feel the need to work hard or improve. If you believe you are a special victim, you use your trauma as an excuse to remain stagnant. Both extremes avoid the uncomfortable truth that life is a series of mundane challenges and that true self-worth is earned through the boring process of showing up, failing, and trying again. Manson suggests that accepting your ordinariness is actually the ultimate liberation. When you stop trying to prove you are a genius or a martyr, you are finally free to accomplish things for their own sake. For a generation raised on the participation trophy, this is a cold shower of reality. To rise in this context means having the humility to accept that you are not the center of the universe. It means recognizing that your problems, while painful to you, are likely the same problems billions of others have faced before. By letting go of the need to be special, you gain the freedom to be effective. You stop chasing the high of exceptionalism and start finding meaning in the quiet, steady pursuit of your own values. The third core idea, the self-awareness onion, choosing better values. Mark Manson introduces a powerful metaphor for personal growth, the self-awareness onion. He argues that self-awareness is not a single aha moment, but a series of layers that must be peeled back, each one more painful and revealing than the last. The first layer is simple emotional self-awareness, understanding what you are feeling. The second layer is understanding the why, the reasons behind those emotions. But the third and deepest layer is the most critical, your values. This layer determines the metrics by which you measure your life and ultimately the quality of your problems. Many people suffer because they are measuring their lives against shitty values. Manson defines these as values that are externally driven, socially destructive, or completely out of our control. Examples include the pursuit of material wealth for its own sake, the need to always be right, the desire to be liked by everyone, or staying positive at all costs. If your value is being the richest person in the room, you are essentially handing your happiness over to the stock market or your boss. You have chosen a metric that ensures you will always feel inadequate, no matter how much you achieve. To live a good life, Manson suggests we trade these shitty values for internal, controllable, and reality-based values. Values like honesty, vulnerability, self-respect, and curiosity are powerful because they are process-oriented. You can choose to be honest right now, regardless of what the world does to you. When you change your values, you change what you give a fuck about. You stop caring about the expensive car you don't have and start caring about the integrity you do have. You don't eliminate the struggle, you simply choose a better struggle. The subtle art is ultimately an exercise in value realignment. It asks us to look at our deepest layers and ask, is the metric I'm using to judge my success actually helping me, or is it just making me miserable? By peeling back the onion and challenging our ingrained beliefs, we move from being reactive victims of our environment to being proactive architects of our character. True self-awareness isn't about finding a hidden genius inside. It's about admitting the uncomfortable truths about our motivations and having the courage to choose better ones. The fourth core idea, the responsibility/fault fallacy. One of the most life-altering distinctions Mark Manson makes is the difference between fault and responsibility. We often confuse the two, believing that if something is not our fault, we are not responsible for how we deal with it. Manson argues that this is a catastrophic logical error that keeps people trapped in a state of perpetual victimhood. While you may not be to blame for the tragic events, unfair circumstances, or the actions of others that have hurt you, you are 100% responsible for how you choose to perceive those events and how you react to them in the present. Manson uses the analogy of a card game. You were dealt a hand of cards. You didn't choose the cards. You might have been dealt a losing hand while someone else was dealt an ace. That is not your fault. However, the game, your life, depends entirely on how you play the hand you were given. The person who sits at the table complaining about their bad cards will always lose. The person who takes responsibility for playing their difficult hand with strategy and courage is the one who truly lives. Responsibility is not about taking the blame, it is about reclaiming your power. This concept shatters the victim mentality that is so prevalent in modern discourse. When we wait for the person who hurt us to apologize or for the system to change before we can be happy, we are essentially giving away our agency. We are saying that our well-being is dependent on external factors we cannot control. By taking responsibility even for things that weren't our fault, we take back the steering wheel of our lives. We move from asking, "Why did this happen to me?" to asking, "What am I going to do about it now?" For the Read and Rise audience, this is the ultimate grown-up realization. It is the moment you stop being a passenger in your own story. To rise is to accept the beautiful burden of choice. Even in the deepest pain or the most unfair situation, you still own the choice of what that pain means to you. You are the architect of your own character, and that architecture is built one responsible choice at a time. The moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you become truly free. The fifth core idea, the sunny side of death, the ultimate filter. Mark Manson concludes his philosophical journey with the most uncomfortable yet liberating truth of all, the sunny side of death. He argues that our modern culture is in a state of deep denial regarding mortality, fleeing from the reality of our finitude through toxic positivity and immortality projects, such as the obsession with fame, wealth, or leaving a digital legacy. However, Manson posits that death is the only filter capable of stripping away the trivialities we obsess over. In the face of your own death, the fear of embarrassment, the need to be special, and the anxiety over a stranger's opinion simply evaporate. Death is the light by which the shadow of all life's meaning is measured. Manson suggests that because our time is strictly limited, our attention, our fucks, is our most sacred resource. We do not have the luxury of time to care about everything. Therefore, not giving a fuck evolves into a form of essentialism. When you realize that you will eventually cease to exist, you are forced to choose the essential few over the trivial many. Death redefines happiness. It is no longer a fleeting high or a temporary escape, but a sense of legacy and meaning found in the problems you chose to solve and the values you stood for while you were here. The subtle art, in its final form, is not a guide to nihilism or cynicism. It is a call to live with radical authenticity. Manson tells us that a good life is not a life without problems, but a life filled with the right problems. When you stop trying to avoid the inherent pains of existence and start embracing the struggles that matter, you find a level of internal peace that no superficial self-help exercise could ever provide. Greatness does not come from being extraordinary or perfect, but from being responsible for your choices and your values in every single moment. For the Read and Rise audience, this is the ultimate lesson in self-sovereignty. Rising does not mean hovering in an illusion of perfection. It means diving deep into the raw, messy reality of the human experience. True elevation is looking into the mirror of mortality, accepting your flaws, and consciously deciding where to invest your energy. Death reminds us that we have no time to live by the metrics of others. Empty your backpack of the stones that don't belong to you. Choose your burdens with care and walk your path with honesty. The final word, the beautiful burden of choice. As we close a chapter on Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, we realize that he hasn't been teaching us how to be indifferent, but rather how to engineer our priorities. He leaves us with a profound realization: suffering is inevitable, but meaning is optional. Life is not a series of effortless victories, it is a series of struggles. We do not always have control over the storms that hit our ship, but we have total sovereignty over the compass we use to steer through them. The rising we advocate for on this channel does not mean hovering above the pains of reality. It means diving into them with conscious courage. It means stripping away the exhausting need to be extraordinary or special and starting to live an authentic life, one where we take full responsibility for our choices, even in the harshest circumstances. Remember, a good life is not a life without problems. It is a life filled with problems worth having. Empty your backpack of other people's expectations, the obsession with comparisons, and the facade of toxic positivity. Keep only the values that make you proud when you close your eyes at the end of the day. In the end, selective concern is what gives us the space to give every ounce of our passion to the things that build our souls and leave a real mark on this world. We have finished peeling the onion of self-awareness with Mark Manson, and now the floor is yours. If this summary helped you see your life through a sharper, more honest lens, share it with someone who needs this reality slap. Subscribe to Read and Rise now to stay part of our journey into the books that actually spark transformation. My question for you today: what is the one metric or value you are choosing to adopt from now on to measure your success? Let's start a deep conversation in the comments below. Until we meet in the next chapter, stay real, stay responsible, and as always, keep rising.